Sunday's Greatwood hurdle, an incredibly competitive handicap, and we've got a top team of Dave Orton and Mark Brown, race analysts, to look ahead to the race. And Dave, we'll start with the favourite, Petite, trained by the top man, Philip Hobbs, won it 3 times in the last decade.
Well, that's the big thing going for him, isn't it? I mean, I watched him as a novice at times last year, and to me he looks slow. I seem to remember him getting beaten at Towster by a horse called Buddy Holly. Fairly average on the flat, fairly average again over hurdles. So where's this improvement come from? Okay, he won, and he ran very close to Via Galilei, who is Gary Moore's. So that sort of ties him in quite nicely with Sunday's race. But what I would say about him is that he looks more of a chaser to me as well. You mentioned Philip Hobbs' record, he's won it 3 times in the last decade, but those horses, they were all pretty special.
All previous Cheltenham Festival winners, weren't they? Yeah, I think Detroit City had obviously won the Triumph Hurdle, Rooster Rooster won the County Hurdle, and Manora had won the Supreme, whereas this one's got nothing like that calibre of form so far, for all that he finished a good third in the Imperial Cup last year. But I'll agree with Dave, I think he looks more of a chaser, and he's up £10 from his win last time. So for all that I can see him running really well, I think he'll be bang there. You've got to respect Hobbs in this race. I don't see him winging it.
The one thing to mention about that with the weights is he's £9 ahead of the handicapper. I think he's gone up to a mark of 142, hasn't he? So from that point of view, he's got Richard Johnson on him, he's got Philip Hobbs next to his name, he's got a 1 next to his name, and he's £9 ahead of the handicapper. I can't also remember penalised runners of this race either.
No, traditionally I don't think it's been a good thing, but yeah, as I say, I do respect him being from the Hobbs yard as an exposed one, but
I'm opposing
not for me. So,
okay, so opposing the favourite then. What about the second favourite, Moon Dice, winner of the Galway Hurdle?
Yeah, this is a very interesting horse. I mean, at first I wanted to oppose him. I looked at him and I thought, where's he come from, this horse? But if you look at him, he's only had a handful of starts. I think he's only had 10 starts to date. And last year, he looked thoroughly exposed, pretty much against some of the better Irish novices. He tried his luck in a handicap company, it didn't work out. However, he resumed in May and he slammed a horse called Worldly Wise by 7 lengths. Worldly Wise has still got to win over hurdles, but he was very good on the flat for Pat Flynn, you know, an age ago, and he's been running second to some decent horses. He then went to Galway and he pretty much hosed up. You had to be prominent that day. Galway's a track which they always never seem to work out, these riders. They hold their horses up and they never get into it. He was always perfectly positioned in that race. Again, I wanted to take him on that front. I thought, how's he won this, you know, this big, massive Galway hurdle? I didn't know. However, you look at the form, and he's got things like the Real Article, probably wasn't suited by the hustle and bustle of that race, but he's come out and he's unbeaten since. The form looks decent. If he lies up handy, he's unexposed because he's only had 10 starts. At around about 8 to 1, I think he's a very, very solid each-way bet. He's got to lie handy, though.
Not run for a while, though. Would that put you off?
Not really, not massively. I think that you want the more unexposed ones coming into this. In fact, there's a very good stat about horses never having actually won a handicap prior to this, so that's maybe against him. But he's only had the 10 starts. It's not like he's had a handful of starts. He's been running every week. We don't know how good he is yet.
Well, another one, Mark, that's well fancied, Brour and Paul, won well at Ascot last time and beat half the field on that occasion.
He did, yeah. As you say, quite a few of these reopposed today. When he was a juvenile last year, he started off, looked quite impressive to begin with, and then he struggled in better company at Cheltenham and at Aintree. But he had a breathing operation over the summer, as often many of the nickel horses do. He showed massive improvement first time back. Will he do it again off a higher mark in a better race? I'm not so sure. I wouldn't mind betting at least 1 or 2 that finish behind him reverse the form this time.
I've got a slightly differing view to that. He was massively hyped last year, wasn't he? Let's face it. And you know, he disappointed. He won very easily when he won at Taunton, I believe. And then he went to Cheltenham. He lined up about 20 to 1. Obviously, they had Zarkanda in the race, who was the unexposed one. He was the sexy one, if you like. But he actually, if you watch the Triumph, he travels quite nicely until 2 out. Now, looking at his Ascot performance, we were chatting about him the other day. He's massively hyped, this horse. He's another Nicholls breathing op, isn't he?
Yeah.
Which is, we seem to see so much. The one worry about that is that a first-time angle?
Yeah.
You see these horses that wear blinkers for the first time. That's the time to get them. Second-time headgear is always a worry. It can often be the way about breathing ops as well. However, he was a stayer on the flat for the Aga Khan in France. I like the way that he bungled the last at Ascot, and I like the way that he got back up on the running. I think if he's going to be the horse they think he is, they think he might be a bit of a horse for 2 mile 4, maybe the Aintree Hurdle, they're talking about that. I think that the stiff track at Cheltenham could be for him. He's the one. I mean, you've got Harry Durham on him as well.
His claim will be a help once again.
Is this the sort of rider we want on our side, though?
not for me in a race like this, for all that he's capable.
It was a very good ride at Ascot, wasn't it? So
It was.
I think I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Nicholls, surprisingly, has only ever won this race once. That was with Rigmarole 2003.
Yeah.
In its,
He ended up running the champion hurdle, didn't he? So.
Again, so is Brampog actually one of these horses? He's not the biggest, but I think he's just going to get his act together, and I think he's probably the most worthy favourite in the race.
Okay, so Brour and Paul getting a very positive mention then by Dave. What about Paul Nicholls' other runner in the race, Sanctuary? I know one you like, Mark.
Yeah, I'm keen on him. He looked a top-class prospect when he won the Fred Winter a few years ago, absolutely bolted up. Things didn't really go right for him last year after he fell in this race, when he was travelling well at the time. He did bounce back later in the season to win the Scottish Champion Hurdle. I think this could be the time to catch him first time back. Top weights have got quite a good record in this race if they've got a bit of class. It's not a strong race, and on occasions over the past 2 years he's been mooted as a potential champion hurdle horse, and for all that he may end up going chasing this season, I think he's got enough class to win this first time back at decent odds.
It has looked like he thinks about it a bit sometimes. Would that put you off at all?
Possibly. A few people have mentioned this. I'd be willing to give him the benefit of the doubt personally. Like I say, I think he'll end up chasing, but he's definitely got that touch of class, and it's entirely possible he could win this without having to be given too hard a time of it.
Okay, well, what about some more slightly bigger prices, the likes of Third Intention? Would you give that one a shout?
Now, Third Intention is the very interesting one. He was a cracking juvenile. You loved him as a juvenile last year,
I did. I thought he was nice, big scopy juvenile, often travelled very well, and he always looked the sort to me who'd do better with another year on his back, which he's had now. So
again, I had him down as a slightly short runner at first, but you look at his Cheltenham record, it bears inspection. I mean, apart from the Triumph, where I don't think it was Joe Tizard's finest hour, was it, in fairness, but prior to that he's got a win and a second next to his name. Track, no problem. You've got to look at that Ascot race behind Brour and Paul. He was cruising 3 out. The Tizard form's been well documented. They haven't had a winner since Q Card won over fences at that Chepstow October meeting. They've had a couple run well, and I probably wouldn't hold that against him too much. It was his first run back. He's a 4-year-old. The 4-year-olds that have won this, there's only been 2. The last of them was Detroit City.
That's right.
And again, he was a previous Cheltenham winner.
So
he had that class. Is Third Intention that classy? I watched that video replay of Brour and Paul, and I thought to myself, I'm going to be thinking that this Third Intention is overpriced. He fits all the stats basically. He's never won a handicap before, so he's in keeping with most of the previous winners. But I was a bit disappointed with how he flattened out off the home turn. I was expecting him to be more there in between the last 2, and he really did drop out. But at 20 to 1, at around about sort of 18s, 16s, he will be carrying a little bit of my money.
See, I wouldn't hold that against him, because on a couple of occasions last year he was far too keen in his races. That was again the case at Ascot first time back. But a couple of paddock judges said he'd really strengthened up and done well, so I reckon that's, one's taken the fizz out of him, and 2, he might come on quite a lot for that. As Dave said, he's a 4-year-old, which isn't necessarily a good thing. He's no Detroit City, who was built like a ball when he won this and went on to start favourite for the champion hurdle. But again, at decent odds, for a horse of his ability, with more to come potentially, I'll definitely be boxing him up in a few exactors, I think.
Agreed.
Okay, so that's Third Intention at each way prices. Anything else perhaps at massive odds that you could see getting involved?
Well, before we go to my left field one, I think we should talk about that Ascot race again, because Amelia Luz is in there. And again, she was easy enough to back on the day at Ascot first time back, but she was backed in just beforehand. And if she'd only settled this horse, she'd win a big prize like this, wouldn't she?
Definitely.
She was bang there 2 out. My problem with her is that, is she a flat track horse? She won at Huntington last year, which again, that form is well worth mentioning. She beat a horse of Alan King's called Panks Tower there. That's the horse which Petite beat at Sandown the other day. She thrashed this horse. Ability-wise, she's got to be there. She was very decent on the flat in France, wasn't she?
Wasn't beaten far by Serafina and the Diane, was she?
There you go.
Like you say, it's just a case of whether she can fulfil that potential by settling, which up until this point she hasn't.
She hasn't run well at Cheltenham on her 2 starts. She pulled up obviously in the Triumph. She was very disappointing. Was it at this meeting last year when it was in the Sam Winner race, wasn't it?
I think
so she's got that to prove. I can see her being bang there turning in. She's got Geraghty on board. No one riding better at the moment. I don't think she'll get up the hill.
Okay, and you mentioned a left field selection as well. What would that be?
Yes, Tom George has got a Loffy in it. He was 5th, I believe, in this last year off a £3 higher mark. He was a 4-year-old that year. It was a stronger Greatwood last year. Tom George, we know what he's done. He won with Halley, didn't he, that French Gold Cup the other day. He's going really well at the moment. Alofi had a prep one in France. That was last month. At around about 25 to 1, he's the one that I won't be able to get sort of out of my head. I must have a little bit on him as a saver. For those of you that want to have a decent priced horse, a Loffy's the one.
Okay, so a Loffy at a massive price possibly each way, but if I had to ask you for your 1, 2, 3, who would they be?
Okay, it's going to be Brour and Paul. I'm going to give him, that leap of faith that's required to beat Moon Dice and Third Intention.
And for you, Mark?
Okay, I'll be going Sanctuary to win off top weight, Third Intention, second, and Petite. For all I don't think he'll win, I think he'll run well and be third.